many videos on the Nephilim, but people might be surprised to know that they actually show up in the Siddur, which is the prayer book for the Jewish people. And it's mostly quoting Psalm 145, which I highly recommend you look up if you don't already know it. That is an example of a psalm that is for everyone, for every person in the world. And they say it every single day. It's part of the daily prayers. And you can see here, I've mentioned many times that the Nephilim, one of their names is the Gibborim. And you can see Gibbor right above it, right there. So, Gibborim is one of the 7 names of the Nephilim. So it's not entirely astonishing that you would find Gibbor here. And I've mentioned that the Nephilim are, in fact, the Kenites, and you can see this in Genesis 6:4 as the Kenite people who were around living at that time. Here's an example from the Siddur. Sustainer of the living with kindliness, resurrector of the dead with great mercy, supporter of the fallen. Here it is, the Nephilim. The fallen ones, supporter of the fallen, and healer of the sick, and releaser of the imprisoned, and fulfiller of his faithfulness to those who sleep in the dust. Who is like you, master of mighty deeds, and who can be compared to you, king who causes death and restores life, and causes deliverance to sprout forth? So there's an example. And here's another one. Weekday Shachrit. Your kingship is the kingship for all times, and your dominion is in every generation. Adonai, one of Hashem's name, one of God's names, supports all the fallen and straightens all the bent. Again, this is a quote from Psalm 145. This fallen and supports the fallen and straightens the bent. The eyes of all look expectantly to you, and you give them their food in its proper time. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living being. Adonai is just in all his ways and benevolent in all his deeds, and so on. So we have here fallen and bent. And you can see that these words come up in quoting Psalm 145 many times. But I mentioned how the Nephilim are the Kenites, and Cain and the serpent are connected. And it says here, the snake is saying, Hashem, or Adonai, supports all the fallen and straightens all the bent. Which is interesting. And it says, this is the serpent. And the expression denotes bending low, so that the phrase means that which walks bent down and fallen upon its belly. Bent and fallen, there with the snake, or the serpent. And of course, the Zohar refers to Cain as unclean jealousy of menstruation, and he describes the very birth of Cain as due to the pollutant that the serpent had injected into Eve. So here we see the connection between Cain, who's infected with the pollutant of the serpent, the reason why he could become a murderer. And here's Psalm 145. Again, if you're not familiar with it, check it out, because it's a universal psalm. And it has the Nephilim in it in verse 15. This psalm, Psalm 145, is part of a collection of psalms put together by the great Rebbe Nachman to atone for sins, especially for wasted seed. This is a compilation of 10 psalms put together by one of the greatest rabbis ever to atone for all types of sins. and especially for wasted seed, which is interesting because the Nephilim were very guilty of this wasted seed before the flood. It's one of the sins that brought the flood. And you can see here in the Jastro's dictionary the root of Nephilim is here, and it says it's related to capacity for seed. Very interesting. And it even quotes Genesis 6:4, the Nephilim. Right here, they filled the world with their abortions by their lascivious life. And the word that they're using there is Nephilim for these abortions.